Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Tony Ragusia. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I work at Evangelical Community Hospital in Lewisburg, which is about 30 minutes south of Williamsport. It sits along the beautiful Susquehanna River, which you may not know is probably one of the oldest rivers in the world. And it's the home of Bucknell University. Go Bisons. I've been asked to talk to you today about dealing with difficult health news. So I thought I'd begin by sharing a personal story about my own health scare. Several years ago, I went to see my physician for a regular physical. I felt fine. I wasn't worried about it. We did some blood work and I got some news. My calcium levels were high. Now, that didn't bother me, but I could tell my physician was really concerned, and he wanted me to get a battery of follow up tests right away. You see, calcium is never supposed to be high. The body is really good at regulating that. And usually, when it's high, the reason is because a tiny part of the thyroid gland, which is located around your neck, a tiny part called the parathyroid, is malfunctioning. And often that's because it's not working right because there's a tumor on it. And usually that's benign, but it can also be cancerous. It may require surgery. So, for several weeks, as I was going through follow up tests, I was thinking in my mind about all the awful things that might happen as a result of this. Would I need surgery? Did I have cancer? I felt scared. Now, long story short, it turned out that the cause was benign. I was fine. But there were many points along this journey where I could have just decided not to continue. First, before I even went to get my physical, many people avoid physicals precisely because they're worried about getting bad news, even if they feel fine. Then, once I got my lab results, I could have chosen not to get all the follow up tests. I mean, after all, it took a lot of time out of my schedule to get them all done. Some were uncomfortable, and it cost me a lot of money because I had a high deductible. I might have even decided not to get the tests because if I didn't, then I could just pretend I was fine and not have to face the decision of whether to go through surgery. So, why did I do all that work? Well, I went to the physical because I'm the kind of guy who believes an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I did the tests right away because, as a general rule, I try and deal with problems promptly and directly because I know that putting things off and avoiding usually makes things a lot worse. Now, maybe you're like me, but maybe you're not. Maybe you're the kind of person who avoids things that could turn out to be scary or uncomfortable. Maybe you tend to put things off and avoid problems because you get easily overwhelmed or because you're worried you don't have the time or money to deal with problems. Or maybe you think if you don't deal with it, then you can pretend everything's fine. If any of this describes you, I would encourage you to reach out to a psychologist or another type of mental health professional, not because you're crazy, but because changing behavior is tough, and often we need help to figure out how to do it. Psychologists are experts in human behavior, and we know that avoidance of problems causes all kinds of complications in people's lives and is often fixable with help. Now, avoiding healthcare is a really common thing that people do. Surveys show that maybe a third of people avoid seeing their physician even when they have concerning symptoms or known serious medical problems. This obviously is a problem because in the meantime, your health problems often don't go away and in fact might get much worse, which usually makes people want to avoid dealing with it even more because they know it's getting worse and they're afraid the treatment will be that much more unpleasant or painful or expensive. Some people avoid because they just don't trust health professionals or because they can convince themselves that they just don't need it. Some people have obstacles that they can't overcome, like transportation difficulties or difficulty getting time off work or finding a specialist who's taking on new patients. Sometimes health insurance won't cover what's needed. Or maybe people fear being judged by their healthcare professional or fear not being able to understand what the professional tells them. Maybe they had a bad experience with healthcare in the past. There's all kinds of reasons, and I don't have time to talk about all of them. As a general rule, human beings make decisions based off of how we think they will make us feel in the short term, not the long term. And we make decisions that prioritize avoiding harm or loss over options that offer the potential for gain and reward. It is important to be aware of this tendency because we can choose to make a different decision. We can choose to think long-term instead of short-term. We can choose to focus on the potential benefits of taking a risk instead of the harms. But this can be really hard to do, especially for people who suffer from clinical depression, severe anxiety, overwhelming stress, or other emotional problems. If that describes you, or if you're not sure if it describes you, as I said, I'd encourage you to reach out to a mental health professional. Now, let's say you did get some bad health news. Like me, you might feel scared, sad, overwhelmed, even angry. I once had a patient with cancer who was very angry about having cancer because she felt like she had done so much to live a healthy life, yet that didn't protect her, and she felt like that was really unfair. Well, something that we know from research is that for most people who get breast cancer, the most difficult period of time for them emotionally is actually the period of time while they're waiting for their test results. And then right after they get the results of the test and the diagnosis of cancer. It's the worrying and the not knowing, then the shock and fear of the diagnosis that's so upsetting. Now, in a way, that's a good thing because it means that you get the hardest part out of the way first. If you think you might be in for some really tough news, I would encourage you, if possible, to have another person that you trust come with you to that appointment or call in by phone so that they can hear everything. That's because you might become so overwhelmed with feelings that you can't pay attention as well. And you might not remember what the doctor says or what questions you should probably ask. So having a friend or family member along can be really helpful. Try to reassure yourself that this time is probably going to be the hardest time, and you will probably feel better as time goes on. That's because most people do learn to adapt over time to really bad things. That's something human beings are actually really good at, unless they're already overwhelmed by stress, which is when more help is needed. If you get bad medical news when you're already overwhelmed, it can feel like the straw that breaks the camel's back. You just want to give up. But the solution isn't to give up, it's to get more support. That support can be formal, professional support, like what you get from your physician or a religious leader or a mental health professional. Or it can be informal support, like what you get from talking to a friend or family member, or for someone else who also has the same medical problem as you and knows what you're going through. The more sources of support you have, the better. Some people don't want others to know about their medical problems because they worry that it will put a burden on others, or because they don't want to be pitied or treated differently because of it. What I can tell you is, from my experience, these kinds of worries just aren't justified most of the time. You are probably someone who feels good helping others in need, and so are the people around you. They probably won't feel burdened. And if you're concerned about being treated differently, just be upfront about what you're looking for from them. They will probably adjust to whatever boundary you set. The important thing is to be clear and assertive. Don't expect others to be able to read your mind about what you want. Now, nobody feels like being out of control. But a serious health problem can really highlight for us just how little control we have over our bodies and our lives. This can be a really tough reality to accept, but learning to distinguish between what we can and can't control and learning to accept what we can't control can actually be very liberating, not scary. It's normal to worry about the future when you're sick, and worry can be a very helpful feeling. Worry helps motivate us to take action, just like how worrying about my health motivated me to do things that otherwise I wouldn't like to do, like going through a bunch of tests. But worry can also be unproductive. How do you know the difference? Well, ask yourself, can I do anything about what I'm worried about right now? What can I do that would help me to feel more reassured? If you can think of something, then you should do it as soon as possible. But if you can't think of anything that you can do in the short term, then that's unproductive worry. It's just wasted energy that you can't afford to lose when you're facing a serious problem. So here's what you do. After you identify it as an unproductive worry, as soon as you can, the faster the better. I really mean it. Do something to get your mind onto a different track. Do a chore, listen to music, talk to a friend about something else totally unrelated. Go for a run, even take a nap. Whatever it takes, as long as it doesn't involve, illegal drugs and alcohol. Using substances, sometimes even prescription substances, to help manage your thoughts and feelings is rarely a good idea and may even make things worse. Talk to a mental health professional if that's a problem for you. So some final pieces of advice. If you're concerned about someone with a health problem other than yourself, don't be afraid to say something. Some people worry that if they bring up the problem, they will make the person feel sad or stressed, but that's rarely the case. In fact, most people with a serious illness want it to be acknowledged. Otherwise, it feels like a secret that everyone's pretending not to know about. What they don't want is for their relationships and their lives to fully revolve around this illness. So ask the person how they're doing and if there's anything you can do to help. Then follow their lead. If they don't seem to want to talk about it, let it alone. If you're not sure what they want, ask. And finally, most importantly, if you get some bad health news, take care of yourself. This may be a long journey, so plan like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Pace yourself. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Eat healthy food. Don't take on new responsibilities. Try to keep stress to a minimum. Let people know that you may need help or may need to take time for yourself in the future. Avoid drugs and alcohol, including smoking. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Remember, you would want others to ask you for help, and you wouldn't think any less of them if they did. Well, neither will they. Don't drop your hobbies or the other activities that give you joy, because that will sustain you over time. Don't isolate yourself. Now is the time to add support, not throw it away. If you're feeling too focused on your own problems, look around. Find someone else to help, because we generally feel better about ourselves when we help other people. Give yourself permission to feel whatever you feel, whether that's sadness or anger or fear or worry, but set limits on it. Feel it for a while, then put it away for a bit. Focus on other things. Everything in moderation. Oh, and brush your teeth, put on clean underwear, and don't forget to call your mother. She misses hearing from you. All right, that's all I've got for today. I know I haven't covered everything that you might have questions about, so feel free to reach out if you need to. Take care and good luck.